Y'all, Bitcoin is sitting at $61,100. With this new paradigm shift, I think it's very important to go back in time and not look at historical cycles, but look at historical landmarks in Bitcoin's price action to try to at least have some sort of semblance of what's going to happen going forward and try to make a plan going forward. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and leave me a comment below. As I've discussed ad nauseum in previous videos, my plan and the plan of a lot of TA experts out there was to reject off of the 61865 golden pocket for Bitcoin, which sat between 48 and 50K, and ultimately have somewhere between a 30 and 40% correction before the halving. This has clearly not happened. The ETF and institutional Bitcoin adoption has pushed Bitcoin into the stratosphere, teetering on going parabolic, currently sneaking up on all-time highs. The reason for this is because miners are only able to produce 900 Bitcoin per day, and institutions are buying up to 9,000 per day right now. There's no Bitcoin left to buy. And that's going to be exacerbated after the halving when the daily rate is around 450 Bitcoin. So what we're seeing here is a shift in cycles, potentially turning this cycle into what people are calling a left translated cycle, meaning that everything is pushed forward and also that the entire cycle is faster overall. Now for the rest of this cycle, on this channel, you're probably not going to hear me talking about massive corrections anymore. The only massive correction that I'm going to be looking for is the one that comes after the top of the bull cycle. So you all can take some solace in knowing that it's not going to be doomsday, which it never was doomsday for me. I see things from a data perspective and a probabilities perspective, and the probabilities were that Bitcoin would have a correction. It doesn't look like it's going to have that major correction now, but I do want to point out a couple of things. In general, I'm not going to make a forecast on a big dip, but I just want people to remember what goes up at an exponential rate usually comes down at an exponential rate. I'm not saying that Bitcoin's going to go from 60K to 30K here, not saying that whatsoever, but I am saying that corrections are a normal thing. Obviously, with this being a new paradigm of cycle, I can't have any sort of really prediction on when that correction's going to happen or if that correction's going to happen. I just want to make it very apparent that if you see a big correction in this market, that doesn't mean that you should sell your coins. Now that being said, we're going to do a little time analysis along with just some simple lines. There's nothing really complicated here, but here's what I want to do. We're going to start off, we're going to grab a trend line and we're going to run this high of the previous bull cycle just straight across and kind of look at it from a distance, okay? We can see that Bitcoin is approaching it. Actually, it is roughly 12% from all-time high, which is far greater than any pre-halving run that's ever happened in the past. What we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to draw that same line here from the previous cycle top when Bitcoin broke it. The one thing that I want to note, as far as from a date perspective, is really this last cycle. Okay, I want to know, when did Bitcoin cross all-time highs? Well, it pierced it here in November 30th of 2020. The reason that I bring that up is not necessarily because of Bitcoin, but it's because of the entire market in general, including altcoins. So if we look at the time from when Bitcoin first breached the previous all-time high right here and run a date range to the top of the bull market, it was 343 days. So right on a year, Bitcoin topped out on the next bull cycle after it did that. This would be the definition of a left translated cycle, where we don't see the full 1,064 days that we normally see from the time perspective. Because as I've said in previous videos, the bear market bottom to the bull market top is generally 1,064 days. As you can see right there, from the 2018 low to the 2021 high, and the same applies to the cycle previous to that. Using that same logic on this cycle, what we would anticipate is that 1,064 days from now, which is approximately October 20th, 2025, would be the cycle top for this cycle. However, in this left translated cycle, we would be more working off of when Bitcoin crosses the previous all-time high to when the next bull market top was. So in this case, again, it's approximately 343, 350 days, call it a year. So a year from when Bitcoin crosses all-time highs, let's say it crosses all-time highs in the next week or so, which it looks like it's poised to do right now. 343 days from now would put the top around early 2025. Which, if we see this left translated cycle play out, that's a potential possibility. Also, it could be that, like I said in my last Bitcoin video, that it could just be more intense. This cycle could just be that explosive, that much capital flowing in, and maybe the cycle lasts its normal time. of 1,064 days from the bear market bottom to the new high. Nobody really knows, but that 1 year mark is where I'm really personally going to start to get very interested in my positions, what they've done, and if this looks sustainable going forward. Generally, at that 1 year mark after the halving, there's a decent sized correction, but we haven't even hit the halving yet, and we're already looking at 1 year. So it's going to be a little bit different this cycle. I think we're going to have to be more alert of our positions and keep track of the market to see what's going to happen going forward. Now, if you're anything like me, you're also probably very interested in altcoins. So if we go back and look at the previous cycle again, November 30th, 2020 was when Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high. Let's pick a couple altcoins here and see what they were doing during that time period. Let's start with one that we know we have data on, which again, it's not my favorite altcoin, but we have the data on it. That's Cardano. We go back to that time period, November 30th. Cardano was right here. Cardano actually, there was a slight correction. Right after that, there was a correction of approximately 30% on Cardano. After that, to the all-time high was around a 24x. And that happened over the course of 252 days for this one in August of 2021. If we look at another one that was around back then, let's look at Chainlink. If we run that exact same time frame from November of 20, you can see Chainlink was actually ripping during that time period, but it did have a pretty solid retrace. But if we just go to November 30th, like we did with Cardano, you can see that it actually had a correction around this time of 48% before then rallying over the course of approximately 160 days to the tune of 518%. So Chainlink in the previous cycle actually got most of its gains prior to any of that activity happening. We can also take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum didn't have too big of a correction. It was only around 15%. And then over the course of approximately 350 days, again, it rallied 900%. So basically a 10x there. So there's quite a varied performance in altcoins. Chainlink specifically was the one that performed better throughout the bear market. But most of these coins did like a 9 to 10x after Bitcoin breached its all-time high. So there's that. Of course, this could be much more intense this cycle with all the institutional capital flowing in. It's also worth it to note this huge increase in Bitcoin dominance that we've seen over the last week, headed up to that target that I initially had around 57 to 62%. This thing could keep going, and once it does finally reject wherever it ends up, I think then that's where we're going to see altcoins take off. But right now, that other chart that I mentioned several times on this channel, total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin, is actually headed down, and it's made a pretty significant move down in the last couple of days. I would expect that as Bitcoin continues to go up, that this chart will continue to go down. Now, when this chart starts to get lower toward maybe the 25 to 30 area, that's when I think is going to be the best value for altcoins. If you don't already have them, of course. If you already have them, you should just continue holding them. But for now, I think we're in a period where Bitcoin's going to do its thing. And when Bitcoin finally stops and consolidates along with Ethereum, that's when we're going to see big explosions in the altcoins. If not sooner than that, maybe they're going to start moving up quite aggressively as well as Bitcoin continues to go up to all-time high. In fact, as we've been sitting here talking, Bitcoin has gone up to 62,000. It was at 61,000 when I started making this video. So just in the course of one 4-hour candle, Bitcoin has made another $1,000 move up. People, including myself, are wondering, when is it ever going to stop? And I think that's because Bitcoin exchanges don't have much Bitcoin anymore. There's not enough to buy. So the question is this a new paradigm shift? I think it is. But I also think that we need to determine, is this going to be a left translated cycle on top of a paradigm shift, or is this going to be a normal length cycle? The only way to find out is experience, but we also need to plan for the future, and especially in the next 365 days to see, are we going to have a full 2 years from now to make profit, or is retail going to start coming in very quickly and aggressively, and this cycle is over faster than we anticipated? If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below, let me know your thoughts on the left translated cycle, and we will see you in the next video. Safe trading.